Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is that you inky savages are joining us for episode number 156 of the PenBoyRoy Pentertainment Podcast. Me and Tom are very excited to be here. We love doing these shows. We love doing them for you. Before we get started, before I start with anything else, I want to talk to you. I know you think I'm about to talk about sponsors. No, I'm not. I'm not going to talk about sponsors. The first thing that I'm going to actually talk about is a very heartfelt thank you. I want to thank several people, including, let's see, who do we have here? I'm going to start with 3 anonymous donations to my buddy Eric, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago for his mental health awareness ride for ADHD. I'm going to leave the link in the description for donations below. ADHD has been something that had plagued my life and has caused me so many problems in my life. And the fact that I was able to have Eric on the show and open up donations to you guys, and the fact that guys like Nathan donated, and Pen Chalet, Luxury Brands of America, anonymous donators, I really do appreciate it. It means so much to me that you guys are just willing to make donations. A donation is a donation. It could be $5, $10, $100. It all means the world to me because you're not getting anything in return other than knowing that you're putting out something positive into the ether. And it's such a warm feeling to see that my listeners are just going out of their way to do this. It's very much appreciated. I love you guys. I really do appreciate it. So I'm going to leave its link in the description below. Please make a donation if you can. And if you did, thank you. I want to thank Nathan for donating. That's, you're awesome. Some guy named Tom Odo. Oh, so obviously Tom made a donation. Yeah. And he had to top my donation by $1, which is hilarious.
I was being altruistic and a dick at the same time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But I just want to thank everybody for that. Going on to sponsorship plugs, make sure you check out in the description below the affiliate link to Gold Spot Pens. Please make your purchases at Gold Spot Pens using the affiliate link and use coupon code ODDO, O-D-D-O, at checkout for an additional savings on all products on the Gold Spot website, with some exclusions. Snobby brands.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Like Novelor particularly, because of the... at this point, I believe the episode will come out after our major launch this week.
Probably.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure. I'm confused.
There's going to be a very special pen that's up on the Gold
Well,
Spot website.
by now they would have known about it because
they would have.
They will know about it by now because this is episode 156. 155 is going to be the same day we launch the Pentertainment exclusive fountain pen. So, yeah,
that's something to check out there.
Definitely.
Even
Wait
if
a minute,
they can't get the discount on it.
They can't discount.
No.
Wait a minute, hold on a second. It's my exclusive pen. How come they can't discount it?
Because it's going to end up taking money out of your pocket, my friend.
Wait a minute, but discount the pen. Or is that can you not do it? Let this be the special discount.
They're one of those brands. Sorry, dude.
Oh, gosh. Had I known that, I would have went with a different
They could still use
brand.
the affiliate code. They could still get rewards on it. There's the Gold Spot rewards that you could do on it. There's just the reward of knowing that you help.
Oh man, I make
podcast.
fun of all.
Plus, you get a sticker. You get a sticker.
Yeah, you get a sticker. You get a free sticker. Yeah. Oh my god, I make fun of all these snobby brands, and it turns out my exclusive pen is one of those snobby brands.
One of your exclusive
Eat my words. Eat a word, Roy.
Boy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I asked Bryce to update the sponsorship read. Is yours updated? Because mine is updated, but only halfway.
Only halfway.
Yeah, it's like he started writing it and then stopped halfway through. Do you see February 27th?
I don't know.
Because this is going to come out after February 27th. But I'm going to read what he has so far. February 27th. All right. The new Endless Pen companions are here to take your precious pens on an adventure. Available in 2, 3, or 5 pen, these new pen pouches are adjustable to fit pens of any size. Coming to a... That's where it ends. So that's where
that's exactly where it terminates for me too. That's it. He was in the middle of it. He must have gotten a text message or a phone call, and then he was just like, "Oh, I'll get back to that."
Well, so this episode is gonna be the week after the episode with all the pen pouches anyway. So I'll talk a little bit about it since I was sitting in on your business meeting with
you saw that.
With them. These pen pouches are really cool. Let me tell you what they are. They're literally 2, 3, or 5 pen pouches, and some of them have credit card pouches in it too. But the pen pouches themselves, they're like these little zip books. You open it up like a book, and inside are straps. Now the straps are loops that hold the pens
into the inside of the cover.
Right,
yeah.
But here's the crazy thing: I could take the Crusac pen, or I can take any pen, the skinny tool pen, and after I put the pens in, I can pull the strap and tighten all the loops so all the pens are snug.
They're not
awesome.
Individual elastic bands.
Right.
It's one elastic band that's threaded through the inside of the cover, so that way you could adjust them so that one band could have more slack, the other one could be a little bit tighter. So, and then there's like a little slot right in the spine to throw in a cartridge or converter, which is pretty handy.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So you can not only carry around your pens, you can carry around an extra cartridge, or you can carry around an extra converter. I love it. And the quality of the leather is insane. We're talking
so nice.
serious.
You know what I think they do is they take all of the cows that you eat the rest of the meat for, and then whatever's left over, they make them into the leather.
Don't say stuff like that. People are going to hear that and believe it, man. No, but it's like the Wagyu of leather. And get this, there are other brands out there that make pen cases that aren't even real leather that cost double what these Endless leather. These are legit, genuine leather cases. The Endless pen companions, they're legit leather. They're actual legit leather, yet they cost less than some of the pretend leather cases that are out there.
Mm-hmm. And they got the chunky zippers. I like the chunky zippers.
They got chunky zippers.
Galen uses. They use those big old chunky zippers on the side that zip up the entire case. So.
Right. So some of the best pen cases I have ever seen, and real genuine leather to boot, with adjustable straps for the pens. It's amazing. I don't even know the costs. Do you remember what the costs were?
I think the most expensive one, it was like a 5-pen or 6-pen one. I think that was like $50 MSRP. So
are you sure?
And they were lower than that. Yeah, pretty sure.
That's craziness. I mean, don't quote us on the prices, but the prices are so incredibly reasonable, especially for something genuine leather, that well constructed. The stitching is legit. It's pretty awesome. I don't know, Gold Spot. I was sitting in on the meeting.
Oh yeah. They'll be there for sure.
They'll be available, and make sure to use coupon code.
Okay, so I have the the 5-pen. I was right. The 5-pen was $50. 3-pen $45. 2-pen $40.
That is just extremely reasonable.
Be in stock, I think, somewhat soon. So I would just keep a lookout for that when they do arrive.
That is incredible pricing for such legit stuff. Unreal. $50 for a 5-pen case. There are pen cases out there, like I said, that are not even real leather, and they're in the hundreds. It's like mind-boggling. I can't wait to get my hands on these. I'm definitely getting them. I'm definitely the ones I handled when we were at Gold Spot together when we shot last week's episode. I was impressed. I want to just start posting the pictures that I took, but he won't let me. Whatever. What's with all the secrecy? It's not state secrets. We're not selling nuclear codes here. They're pen cases and pens. Like, what's with the I can't talk about it until whatever. BRLCoffeeCo.com. Check out my good friend Neil at BRLCoffeeCo.com. Check out your favorite bean, your favorite cook, your favorite roast. Check out all the cool swag, and make sure to use coupon code ROY at checkout for an additional savings on all products on the BRLCoffeeCo.com website. Please check them out. They got fantastic coffee. I love it. Different strengths. The strongest one is just smooth. The strongest one is a blonde roast, my favorite, called Kiss of Life. Has the strongest content of caffeine, but doesn't give you the crackhead jitters, which is really awesome. Tom, he likes what? Chanel?
Chanel was good. I also had a couple of other ones that was closer, which I thought was really good. It was a dark roast. There was Lovesick with the dollar symbol in the S. That was another dark roast, very strong, flavor wise. And yeah, Chanel was nice though, because they all had a depth of flavor that is not your usual either Dunkin', Bowl and Basket, or Starbucks, where it could be like so roasty it's overburnt.
Right.
It had, like, even at the lighter roasts, it had a lot of flavor.
Sure.
I did French press for all of them, so I did like a coarse grind, French press. I got a whole sampler pack, which just had enough to make basically like a French press pot and a half.
Right.
So it gave me a great kind of like tour, and I love sampling. I'm big on sampling things, so I had a nice sampling of all the different flavors and enjoyed all of them. I don't think there was a bad one out of the batch. So
good. I'm glad to hear that. So,
and I am not getting paid for that testimony either.
No,
so.
He's not. I am. But thank you for that. But check out, again, Goldspot Pens using the affiliate link in the description below. Use coupon code OTTO at Goldspot Pens. Please keep your eye out for the Endless Companion, one of the best, cost-effective, and highest quality pen cases out there on the planet, in the ether, in the universe. Probably the best and most inexpensive pen case ever created in the history of anything ever created ever. And finally, brlcoffeeco.com, the greatest, best coffee ever created in the history of anything ever created ever, at brlcoffeeco.com. Now, once again, thank you for joining us for episode number 156. We have our good friend Mario and Michael. They are the owners of the New York Metropolitan Pen Show, and they are here to give you information and insight into the pen show and just give you have a fun discussion on how they plan to bring one of the smaller pen shows to the forefront of the pen show world. Mario may have had a few hiccups with his connection here and there, but overall, don't worry. It was an excellent episode.
Listen, these are our elders. We were respectful. And just keep in mind that technology is, doesn't quite come like as naturally as it does to us.
Right. So,
and we've been doing this for a long time.
We have,
this,
right?
And
also Mario was kind of blindsided. He didn't expect to be doing this today. Yes. I didn't know he was doing it today. I thought it was just Michael, and then Michael told him 20 minutes before, so he had to scramble. He had to figure whatever. But anyway, it was a good episode. Thanks again for joining us. The longest intro to the podcast ever. I think this marks the longest one. But before we get started with this week's episode of the PenBoyRoy Pentertainment Podcast, this podcast is not scripted and therefore will contain potty mouth words both from Tom and I, so be forewarned, you have been warned. Now, on to the podcast.
The PenBoyRoy Entertainment Podcast. Stay savage.
And we're excited to be here today on this glorious March, whatever day of the week it is. And this is going to be episode number 156, like I said. And today we have very special guests, not one, but two guests. Today we have with us a Mr. Mario A. Campa and a Mr. Michael A. Bloom. Who are these gentlemen, you say? Why do they seem familiar? It might be because you ran into them at pen shows. Could it be pen shows in the East Coast, say the formerly known as Long Island Pen Show, currently known as the Metropolitan Pen Show? If that's what you're thinking, then yes, you are 100% correct. Mario A. Campa and Michael A. Bloom are the owners and the facilitators of the formerly known Long Island Pen Show, which myself and the Odd Oink have gone to and met these gentlemen, and that's how we ended up doing this podcast. So thank you, Mario and Michael, for joining us. And for everybody watching, Michael is the gentleman with the red shirt, and Mario is the gentleman in the fine gray sweater, which is just such an appropriate looking sweater for the occasion that we are doing today. I'm only saying that because Mario was not actually entirely ready for the podcast today. He was kind of given 20 minutes notice by his good friend Michael, and he had some apprehensions about his attire, and I told him, your attire is absolutely fine. You're worried about wearing a gray sweater on a show about pens. Well, let me tell you right now, Mario, you look just fine.
Yeah, I got a Street Fighter shirt on right now.
Right.
So
the Odd Oink has Street Fighter shirt on. But the guys, thanks for being here. I got so much I want to talk to you and ask you questions about with regard to the show. But before we do that, I'm going to start with Mario. I want to just talk a little bit about both of you guys. Can you tell us and tell everybody watching and or listening how you got into fountain pens? And then how is it that you got into pen shows and how you met your buddy? And then we'll switch over to your buddy. Go ahead, Mario.
All right. We only have an hour. So how I got into pens. I have had an affection for writing instruments for most of my life. It stems back to, I'm going to have to admit that I was in school through the transition from fountain pens to ballpoints. That's about the time I was in grammar school. And one friend and I in class were the last two holdouts. We were not enamored with ballpoints, and we just were not ready to give up our fountain pens.
Perfect.
And people purported that it was the thing to do because they didn't blow up, and that was the furthest thing from the truth. And the worst thing was if a ballpoint blew up, that ink didn't come out. The fountain pen ink you could at least wash out. So, so I have that.
Can you just give us real quick, what year was this? Just so everybody has a better idea. What year was it that you guys held out?
Roy, that's not polite of you at all. I'm going to say we're probably.
He doesn't really know us. So.
I think we're looking at certainly very early 70s. This transition to ballpoints would have started to get really popular around 72 or maybe 73-ish.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
You saw ballpoints in the 60s, but they weren't really that. There was no push for them. By the time we got past 1970, they got to be more popular. I think the companies were pushing them much harder, and certainly administration in schools were starting to support the idea, because then you couldn't take. You won't remember this, but there was ink fights. You used to be able to squirt. That's why people loved PFMs. I mean, you could squirt ink across the room when you had a PFM. And, I think a lot of teachers liked the idea of going to ballpoints because that kind of shenanigans just went away. But
then it gets replaced by something else entirely. They always find kids always find ways of doing shenanigans. So.
Right. Wait, really quick. You're using acronyms that I don't think I've heard before. PFM, I'm assuming that's piston filling mechanism?
Wow, no, you know what?
No?
That's not true, but that was damn good, Roy. I got to say, I'm impressed. It actually stands for Pen for Men. The Pen for Men is one of my very favorite Schaeffers ever made, actually. It was released in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
And PFM was the acronym for Pen for Men. It was a larger style crest that has a snorkel filling system.
Oh, Tom, did you know that? Because as soon as I asked the question, you were shaking your head no.
What? That's what question?
When I asked him what PFM was.
No, I answered. I said Pen for Men. But
you knew that?
Heard me. Yeah, I knew that,
yeah. How did you know that? You're like 12 years old. You're
like
a 12-year-old with a beard.
Years younger than you are, Roy.
Yeah. Well, you're still in your 30s, though.
No, I'm not in my 30s anymore.
How old are you now?
I ventured out of there. I'm 40 now.
Oh, good for you. You're really old. All right, going back to you, Mario.
Roy, that was
going back to you. So I'm sorry.
If he's really old at 40, what are you telling me and Mike are, for God's sake?
Well, listen, I'm going to have Tom keep a tally, and every time I say something rude, you guys are going to give me a dime. I'll end up with like. All right. So anyway, Mario, going back, you were talking about you were the last holdout when millions of years ago in the 1970s, when the fountain pens were just on the verge of extinction, and you were the last holdout. And go ahead, continue from there.
So I don't remember when I finally threw in the towel, but I remember taking my stance and holding out for a while. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that has stuck with me through my life. And I will tell you that I used predominantly Schaeffer student pens back then. And I almost always carried ones that were translucent, so I could see how much ink was left in my cartridge. I couldn't stand running out of ink while I was writing something, and I felt like an idiot if I did it. So I carried. My favorites were, I had one that was all clear, one that was trans blue, and one that was trans gray, and that was basically my arsenal of pens through grammar school. So anyway, I eventually threw in a towel and never really lost my affection for fountain pens, but I guess I kind of gravitated away from the culture of it. So we're going to fast forward a whole bunch of years, guys. And
How many?
so let me bring you up to 2003 or 4. So we're going up 30 years.
Okay, so we're talking.
That's a big jump.
So almost 30. So you got peer pressured into doing the wrong thing in school and switching from fountain pens to ballpoint pens. And the peer pressure was so immense that you had to cave and you had to give in. Man, good thing they weren't pressuring you to do drugs. So then you caved for 30 years. What brought you back?
So I owned a store that was pretty eclectic. My store had a department that specialized in string instruments, and the largest department specialized in high-end audio and video, but we really were a 2-channel audio store. That's what we did. It was music making on one side and music listening on the other, and that sign was at the top of the staircase, pointing to the 2 doors to get into the building. Mm-hmm. So as the company grew, obviously we took on more employees, and I needed a second salesman in the audio department on a full-time basis, because at that point we had a second guy who was rotating part-time. And the gentleman who eventually got the job was an avid, and I mean rabid, fountain pen collector. And after working with me for maybe a couple of months, and not more at all, he was suggesting that we should start looking at carrying fountain pens in the store. And I was enamored with the thought, because I'd never really lost my affection for fountain pens, but I also was so far removed that I didn't realize there was such an avid constituency of people who were, convening to talk about and look at pens. I really enjoyed the idea of that. But at that point, we were dealing with guitars and basses and accessories and a plethora of audio equipment, and I dealt with high-end watches, and I was looking at another industry to get the store involved in, and I basically said, his name coincidentally was also Mike. I was like, Mike, I can't really take on another addiction at the moment. That's going to have to take a back burner. And he never gave up. Mm-hmm. And after about 2 or 2.5 years, he finally convinced me to go to a fountain pen show. He's just like, look, just come take a look at it. And, you don't have to, you don't have to jump in, just dip your toe in the water, basically, is what he was getting at. So I went to Steve and Mary Ann's show when it was over in New Jersey. That was in 2006. And coincidentally, this is going to lead into what I'm quite certain Michael's going to share with you. So that was the very first show I went to, and I shouldn't have done it, to tell you the God's honest truth, because it was just another rabbit hole that I did not need to jump into. But I loved seeing the culture. At that point, I'd been doing this kind of business long enough. Everything I've ever done professionally since I graduated from school has focused on the upper crust of any industry, the top 20%, because that's where you find two things that I really enjoy a lot. One is the fanaticism of the user, whether it's a collector or a user. These people are very, very passionate about what they're doing, and that has always fueled me. On the other side of that coin, you find the people who are the most passionate about what they're making. And I will tell you that throughout my career, I have seen men and women who have left very prestigious, very high-paying jobs. I'm talking about chief engineer for AT&T, to give you a particular example of someone who was a friend of mine, who left to go start a company in an industry that they were really, really passionate about.
So not necessarily fountain pens, but you're talking about any other
industry. I'm talking about in general. So when I came to the show, leading up to when I came to the show, I felt like I could instantly identify with the people who were there, both the vendors and the attendees, who had this same level of fanaticism and the same level of passion for pens that I had seen in the other industries I was already doing business in. And that's what I immediately fell in love with. The pens were gorgeous, and I have, my collection is 80 or 90 fountain pens at this point. I love them to death. But that's not really what grabbed me. What grabbed me was this constituency of people who are just so strongly enamored with the pens and the pen community. And that's really what got me in 2007.
Right. So
I was at my first display.
I'm assuming it also had to have had a lot to do with the fact that you yourself had a love for fountain pens in the past. Because I can imagine if you didn't, then regardless of that fanaticism or regardless of the passion that the people showed, you probably wouldn't have been into it. Like for example, if your friend, your coworker brought you to an anime convention and you're not into comic books, you probably wouldn't invest the rest of your life into it just because of the passion, right?
Perfectly true. It's absolutely perfectly true. I think it was because I already had a predisposition for it. That's why he got me to a show. I mean, if he was talking about an industry that I had no interest in, I probably never would have gone in the first place. It was a perfect.
It makes me wonder. Yeah, it makes me wonder if the fountain pen industry didn't pick back up again. I think it was like the late 80s. I think Dante Del Vecchio had a big play in that. But if it didn't pick up and you went to the show and the show was lame and then the show was very pale and boring and there weren't a lot of people, are you saying that had that been the case, you wouldn't be where you are now?
I'd have to say that that's at least plausible. That's at least plausible. I mean, I had the predisposition for the pens, but it really was the people that led me to take the next step to consider the sensibility of actually acquiring enough inventory to get a table at a show.
Right. So the passion and seeing that there is people that you can connect with, because I think that's in the end that's everything that people want. They want to be passionate about someone and something and be able to share that with other people and connect with them. And because that was there, this is where you were encouraged. Is that fair? Oh, okay. So I'm assuming this is at this point in time, you didn't start the ownership of the Long Island Pen Show yet, correct?
No, that would still be a long way off. Michael and I probably, you know what? I want to say to you that there's a possibility we would have met at the show that I just told you about, but he and I didn't really get acquainted until a couple of years later. We were neighbors at the Los Angeles Pen Show. Mike, I can't say that I really remember. I think it was 08 or 09 or maybe as late as 10 when you and I were neighbors in LA. Do you remember?
You don't remember the basement of the hotel in Times Square?
But that wasn't that later? Didn't we meet in LA first?
We
hold on a second. Did. What happened in the basement of the Times Square hotel? What kind of?
I don't know if Mario's going to be happy with me saying this, but we were in the basement of the hotel.
Okay.
This is about 15 years ago, in the worst room known to mankind. It hadn't been opened in about 20 years, okay? But the Zuckers rented it because it was reasonable. And you had to walk down in the lobby of this hotel into the basement, I swear, into the basement. And it was so hot in that basement that they had fans trying to blow air in from both sides. And there were more vendors than there were people. And that was the first time that I ever saw a pen sell for around $20,000. I was.
Oh my goodness! Do you remember what pen that was?
Yes, I do. It was an Aztec, okay, and it was a full-covered Aztec that was sold in the balcony, which I witnessed from a distance, and it was probably sold for a little less than $20,000. Okay.
Wow.
And
But
Mario
listen,
and I were in this basement watching this go down in the distance. Okay. And the same guy that sold the $20,000 pen came downstairs with a whole box of pens that Mario bought. Okay, and I'm standing behind him going, like, shaking my head, don't get involved in these pens because there were so many issues with them. But Mario bought them, okay? And, it was a learning experience for Mario. But it was also the last show that the Zuckers did in the city, okay? They just couldn't keep it up. It didn't work. And they were lovely people who really spent a lot of their passion and times, buying pens. And he owned the New York show,
I see.
and he gave it to me, okay, and my partner Terry Brack, and we took that show to Hofstra because Terry was a professor at Hofstra, so
Okay.
we got the room at Hofstra through Terry, so it was a way of us kind of taking the pen away from New York, the pen show away from New York City, which was ridiculously expensive. The Zuckers lost thousands of dollars, okay, and they both passed away, unfortunately.
I'm sorry. Who is the Zuckers?
The Zuckers were people who were passionate pen people who were involved in many of the early pen companies bringing pens into New York and the European pens. They were involved in it, and they represented 3 or 4 of the companies that were there. And Marianne, unfortunately, at that show was failing, and Steve, lost her, and then he just didn't have any interest in doing the shows anymore. And I felt
Wait, I'm sorry. So Steve and Mary were married. They were the Zuckers.
yes, they were the Zuckers, Steve and Mary. Marianne.
Then she died, and then after that, he lost any steam in doing this.
I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Okay.
And then what he did was he used to come to our show, okay, where Terry Brack and I used to have the show, and he would set up and he tried to get rid of kind of almost like an annuity plan, to be able to sell some of the pens to be able to exist, basically. Okay, and he used to come every year, and he came from Brooklyn and came out to Long Island, and he was a very, very sweet man, and he was the guy who the original Long Island Pen Show was established at Hofstra University because Terry Brack had a room at the science pavilion there, and we used to have a meeting there once a month, and we would show all the old movies of the Schaefer Pen Company. When Schaefer did, during the day they made gyroscopes for the Air Force, and at night they manufactured pens. And they had it was almost a propaganda film, which they showed, but we watched it, and it was absolutely, I wish we had it so we could, give it to you, the show, because it was unbelievable how, it showed the history of World War II, basically, and it played out in the Schaefer Pen Company, okay, which I thought was fascinating to see. But we had some passionate people who were involved in that club, and we had meetings there for 3 or 4 years before we had to move it out of there, and Terry moved it out of there. But we had a club of about 25 people.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. You keep talking about Terry. Terry, who's Terry?
Terry Brack, who was a professor at Hofstra. He was a physics professor at Hofstra, was my partner in the show, okay? But he was originally went to school out in Tucson, and that's where he is right now, okay? He moved back to Tucson. And he was very involved in the show and had a lot to do with the show, but, he just ran out of gas, to be truthful with you, and he left.
Okay. So he's not part of it anymore?
No. Not at all.
Okay.
And then I turned around and I said, I need somebody who's young and creative, and and Mario was always around.
Okay.
And I figured I'd open it up to Mario, and I wanted to go on a long time after. I'm not involved in it, so you have to find somebody young and enthusiastic who's going to move it into the next direction, and we hope that's where it's going to go. So.
Okay, cool. That's cool. So it's kind of you kind of gave us a brief idea of how you guys got together, but I want to just give you a little bit of time just to talk a little bit about you. So you were born in 1947.
Correct.
Okay. And I think
this is probably going to freak you out because I saw some of the stuff that you were doing on some of your other shows. I was a special ed teacher for 40 years.
Okay.
And I used fountain pens to work with the kids that I taught.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to bring in 7 or 8 big reds, fill them up with ink, And as Mario said, it was just watch the ink all over the room. It was, and the kids loved it because they never wrote with something that was so expressive, and that's what kind of turned me on to to get more involved in this stuff. So
In the fountain pens.
it was amazing to watch kids who really didn't care about education at all, but when they got a fountain pen in their hand, they had just a good time, playing around with it and getting ink all over everybody and everything. We both have had some very unique situations that tell you a little bit about the fountain pen industry. Somebody I know called me up one day and said, "Where do you live?" And I told him, on Long Island. And he said, "I'm coming to your house and bring your truck." I said, "Okay." And we went around the corner to a house that was abandoned. And in the backyard, there were 50 cases of Quink and Schaefer ink sitting in the backyard that no one had ever touched in 25 years.
Wow.
And we took that ink to a show, and everybody bought it, and everybody keeps asking me, "Can I have some more of that ink?" It was amazing because it was 1940s and 50s ink that was still good today. And,
wow. They don't make ink like they used to. Nowadays, the popular stuff all smell like butthole at some point in time.
It's close
somehow.
to that. It's close to that,
Right.
or it all gets filled with all sorts of crap that that grows in the bottles. But the old stuff, the Parker Quink, and the interesting thing was there was about 50 bottles of the old school ink, the big gallon things with a little pouring that they used to pour into the inkwells. And Gary Lira, who passed away a couple of years ago, he loved that ink, and every time I saw him, he wanted more bottles of it because it was incredible.
So how would you say Quink ink today, Parker's Quink ink today, compares to the Quink ink of yesteryear?
I'm gonna beg Elf on that particular question because I think the formula is pretty similar, but the old stuff just seems to be just so much better. In fact, I have in my office, I have a bottle of the old stuff, and I like using that much better than the more modern stuff.
So the modern stuff is shit. You could just say it. It's cool. We're good on this show. You could say whatever you feel.
I do, but I know some of the people who manufacture ink in their bathtubs right now. And
Really?
Mario will laugh about that because we both know that there have been people who spent the whole night before they went to a show making ink and then passing out at the show and have to be rescued by a certain doctor that we know, because they...
All right, so we can't talk about that story without details. Start over. You know somebody that was making ink in a bathtub all night long.
Yes.
Overworked themselves, showed up to the show, selling the ink, and then passed out.
Telling me not to say a word about it. Yes, exactly. And
Who is this person?
It was at the... I will tell you privately, but I won't tell you.
Okay.
It's somebody who's still making ink today, so I don't want to give him away. But walked into a show in Boston and just passed out on the floor. Okay, and we all ran to help him and get him. And he got up and he was dressed in I think a tuxedo, Mario, wasn't it? It was something like that.
A suit at least. He was dressed.
A suit. Yes, he was dressed,
and he was making ink in his bathtub.
Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, I think I know who it is. At least one doctor at almost every event.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Bonus about an industry like ours.
Hey, really quick, Michael, if you could do me a favor, you're gonna make me throw up if you keep moving your camera like that.
I moved on my bed.
And everybody watching is like gonna throw up into a barf bag right now. Yeah, if you could just keep it still, appreciate that. All right, so. Once you and Terry split ways because Terry just lost steam, I mean, I don't want to speak too much on that because he's not here. Do you still talk to Terry, first of all? Like, are we going to, shoot?
Occasionally I still speak to him. He was a college professor and he loved his job and he worked very, very hard as a college professor. And having to deal with a show was kind of difficult for both of us. Okay, and he just, like I said, he lost steam, and he decided that he was just going to leave. And one day he just dissolved the corporation that we had and moved to Arizona. And he's up in the.
I mean, the only reason I'm asking and I'm staying on something like this is like everything that we do that's a passion project, right? Is things that we do because we love it and we invest everything into it. And I feel as though if I had a passion project that I was so passionate about and I decided, you know what, I lost steam in it, just to dissolve it out of the blue seems almost self-destructive, right? So was it that he lost passion, you guys weren't getting along, and he just wanted to be gone? Is that the situation?
No,
or
I don't think that was the issue. I think more of it was the fact that he was teaching summers, he was teaching holidays, he was teaching all. I taught all the time too, but I didn't teach at the level that he did, and he was teaching college physics, and I think he lost interest in doing that. I think it just petered out for him, and he needed to get, he wanted to go up to Tucson, Arizona, which I would like to do all the time also, and spend time up in the foothills of Arizona and not have responsibilities that he had to deal with every day. He drove from Long Island, from all the way out in Suffolk County into Hofstra every day with the traffic, and the traffic really beat him up.
Oh, so you're saying he just wanted to just be gone with everything. He just wanted to just retire, relax.
He just called up and said, "Look, I dissolved the corporation. I really miss it, okay, but I just have to move on."
So how involved were you with the corporation when he did that?
Well, we were half interests in both of us, and
so was that upsetting for you just to have?
It was that all of a sudden he disappeared, and the club kind of disappeared. The club was a very healthy club on Long Island. We had about 40 members of it, and also, to be truthful with you, a lot of people got to be in their 70s and older, and they themselves lost interest in what they were doing. They wanted to make life a little bit simpler for themselves.
So the Long Island Pen Show, now named the Metropolitan Pen Show, correct?
Yeah. New York.
Okay. The New York Metropolitan Pen Show. As it stands, it's not the same thing that it was when you and Terry had it. It's completely different, obviously, because you just said that he dissolved the whole thing. So you had to pretty much bring it back from scratch?
No, we had to, COVID came along, and Hofstra would not allow us to do a show for a year and a half. And they were adamant about it, okay? When some of the other places opened up, Hofstra would not. Okay?
Right.
And they were very vociferous about not allowing us to do the show there. In fact, the last show we did there, when it closed at 4:00, Hofstra closed for almost a year at 4:30.
Was that in 2020?
Yes.
March of 2020?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we walked out, my wife and I walked out, and the security guard said, "I'm glad you're leaving. We have to get all the kids out of the dorms, and we're closing the school down." So
Wow.
that was a very shocking thing. We had a very nice show that day. It was, people were there, and then, the shit hit the fan, as you'd have to say, and it disappeared off the face of the earth for about a year and a half. And
Yeah.
in fact, we did the show in the fall this year only because we didn't have a show for a year and a half before, and we wanted not to lose the impetus of having people come to the show, And then Mario came along, and Mario's vision is to make it bigger and better and make it one of the biggest shows that we can possibly make. Okay.
I love that idea. Because you know how many friends I have in the industry who are distributors who don't go to that show. For me, it's such an important show because it's in my neck of the woods. I live in New York.
Right.
And obviously Kenro Industries will be there because they're in Long Island. That's their home turf, right? That's their stomping grounds. They'll go to that show. But, you have guys out west. You have guys like Jaffa Brands. They don't come to the Long Island Pen Show. You have Luxury Brands of America. They don't come to the Long Island Pen Show. And it's such a shame. And when I ask them why, the answer is always, well, it's a really small show. So my question here is, I understand because of Terry, the professor from Hofstra, your former partner, Michael, you had some allegiance to Hofstra University because you had access to it. But what year was it that Terry left and dissolved the organization?
He left in 2020, basically.
Oh, okay. It was 2020. So it was actually very recent.
Yes.
Okay. So then,
But
are we going to?
I also want to make a point to you because we're looking vociferously for another venue, okay? But the problem is the cost of the venues is really ridiculous. I mean, we went to a place in the village and they wanted $18,000 a day. Okay, and they wanted $6,000 to clean the room that night, and another $6,000 for security. Okay, and that's when you're charging $10 admission or $12 admission, it's a lot of people you got to get in the door to make it up.
So I mean, you're throwing numbers. Everybody has no idea if that's a lot or if that's a little because there's nothing to base it against. What is the cost
Mario will give you an idea, okay, about because we are looking and constantly looking, and we have people out in the street looking for another venue that we can get. The thing about Hofstra, truthfully, is two positives. One or three. The cost, number one. Second is the fact that the parking is free. And
Right.
the third is that there's a magnificent food court that people can walk out and get food and coffee and whatever they want right out the door. Okay. And
let's
also-
let's switch over to Mario real quick. So I was just curious about cost. So $16,000 a day plus $6,000 for maintenance, and then what was it, $6,000 for security deposit, which you're going to get back. So let's not put that in there. So they keep security.
No, he said $6,000 for security, not a security deposit.
Oh wow! So what? Do they have henchmen with like M4s standing around the building, like $6,000? So I can tell you right now, that's probably a lot. Like what kind of security are you providing? Like, is it presidential security? But okay, so let's say $12,000 for maintenance and security, $16,000 for just the rental. Nobody has any idea if that a day. Nobody has any idea how expensive that is. Can you give us an idea what it costs at Hofstra University or somewhere? What is not expensive, rather? What is reasonable?
May I?
Sure.
So I'm going to take this back a few minutes when we were talking about the basement in Manhattan. There are challenges that exist in the city of New York that are fairly specific to New York City. I mean, you see similar kinds of things in San Francisco and in Chicago, but nowhere is it as ingrained as it is right here where we are. And it makes doing an event here incredibly expensive. Like, you can't imagine what it costs a promoter to rent out the Javits Center. Because in addition to the cost of the hall, I'm going to take you back to this. I want to give you an example that blew me away. When you want to load into a building in the city, there is a union for a busboy, for a bellhop that takes your product from the vehicle to the lobby. He is not allowed to take that wheel cart anywhere beyond the lobby. You then need another bellhop to take the cart from the lobby to wherever it is you're going in the building. So I'm giving you one simple example of just the challenge. Like, I'm imagining that you guys travel a fair amount, and I would also imagine you'd never, ever anywhere saw the necessity to have a personnel change in the hotel lobby in order to get your luggage cart to a spot in the building. Those are the kinds of things that you're dealing with the unions in New York City. So be cognizant, and also I'd like your listeners to be cognizant that in addition to the actual cost of the room, the cost of doing business in the city, like, everything is completely a la carte. You do not get a dinner with vegetables and a carbohydrate and an aside salad. In Manhattan, everything, so there's the cost of the room, and then there's the cost of electricity, then there's the cost of Wi-Fi, then there's the cost of a microphone if you want to use the PA system, God forbid you want a television. Then, like I said, there's porters to move something for 30 feet. Then you need another porter to go the next 30 feet. So the add-on costs on top of the cost of the room is what really starts to bury you. To answer your prior question a little bit more directly, I will give you a perspective. Normally, a pen show in most areas, and of course you understand that, doing a show in some cities is considerably less expensive. It's not as expensive to put a show on in Orlando as it is to do in San Francisco, right? We understand that.
100%, sure.
Okay. But I would say that most promoters are looking for a venue that is in the 20 to maybe the outskirts of $25,000 for the cost of 3 days to do the show. So most shows you'll have, part or all of Friday and then Saturday and Sunday. So you're looking for something in the low 20. To do something in Manhattan, the room itself, you're already in excess of 40. And that's before any of the add-ons that are mandated. And if you want to get something out of the kitchen, man, you better be able to write a big check. Coffee can be like $600 a pot. It's unbelievable. So the challenge that Mike and I had, and let me say that our conversation for the show actually predated the phone call of him saying, I'm ready for you to join me. Because Terry had told Mike a couple of years earlier that his departure was probably imminent in several years. Now, I would suggest to you that the pandemic probably accelerated his exit. But Mike came to me a couple of years earlier and said, Terry has already told me he's looking at retiring at some point. Are you interested in joining me? And I believe the reason he did that was because I had been talking to Stephen and Marianne about partnering to bring the New York show to White Plains, which you may remember is where I live. And I had promoted shows in the guitar industry in White Plains in the past. So I have had experience with dealing with, local people, and the accessibility of Manhattan to White Plains is also great. It's a 35-minute train ride if you take the express. I liked the idea. And Michael was privy to the fact that Stephen and Marianne and I were talking about that as a possibility. And, they're leaving us. Marianne's getting sick and leaving us really happened right as we were looking to book a venue in White Plains. So that really absolutely coincided time-wise. So I think it's frustrating for me that not only the largest city in the country, but truly one of the great cities of the world survives with this local event that was the Long Island Pen Show. One of the reasons Michael and I decided to change the name last year was to make that a launch pad, let people understand our intent to bring that show into the more national forum so that we could be viewed as another DC and LA and San Fran and the other shows in the country that, as you had said, Roy, people are willing and eager to travel to, both vendors and attendees. We're kind of at the moment seen as a regional show. But it's not that Michael and I don't have the desire or the passion or the willingness to put the time and work in to grow the show. It's like we just can't find somewhere to do it that, like Mike said before, we're not going to risk losing our butts. It's not possible to have a $60,000, $70,000 bill and put on a pen show. Like people are not buying $10,000, $20,000 booths. The tables we sell are under $300 a piece. How many tables do you have to possibly sell, and how many tickets do you have to sell in order to recoup $60,000?
And that's just from your perspective as the promoters of the pen show. Imagine if you had to upcharge. Imagine a table for Gold Spot. Tom's employers was $1,200. How many pens does he have to sell to make that up?
Yeah.
Right. So it's in order for you to, I agree with you. I don't think that New York City is the best option. I think in a fantasy world, New York City is the perfect place because it's the mecca of the world, and transportation, all these things about New York City that make it so great. But I think because a cup of coffee and a roll of toilet paper is $25,000 in New York City, it just doesn't seem feasible. Especially, this is not the E3. This is not E3. This is not a game show, video game show, where budgets are in the millions and millions of dollars. Why not something like, even though it's not New York, why not something like New Jersey, where space and property is cheaper?
Zucker's show was in New Jersey for a couple of years, right by Newark Airport.
Okay.
And the hotel was lovely. Don't misunderstand me. But people didn't come to the show. They didn't. First of all, the hotel charged $12 for parking. Okay, and the admission was $10. I don't remember what it was, but before they walk in the door, it was $25. Now they had people come to the show. Don't misunderstand me, but no more than we had coming to the Long Island show. Okay, and the people that came, yes, they did have some international people who came, but they didn't get the traffic that walking in. Like we figured in Times Square, there would be people who would love to come to the show. Okay, well, they never made it to the basement. They never really did. And when the Zuckers would have a Sunday morning, would provide a lox and bagel breakfast for all of the vendors that had to cost them $10,000. Okay, for the same people who were there for 2 or 3 days and had to live down in the basement where it was 220 degrees. Of course I'm exaggerating, but it was very warm, and you still didn't get the support of some of the people who you would think would have supported the show and would want it to happen. Okay, so and I want to go on to one more thing, which Mario and I discussed this when we were in LA. Years ago, people would come to these shows with thousands of dollars to spend at a pen show, and they would go into their pockets and pull out $100 bills and buy vintage stuff that was going. It was amazing, and spend a lot of money. Okay, there's a whole story about us finding a pen on Long Island that sold for $34,000. Okay, and it was a very strange Waterman. But the people who come to shows now are very young, and they do not look to spend the kind of money that some of the older people do. And Mario and I discussed this. We've discussed this in Los Angeles. They come in. They want a $25 pen with shimmering ink, and they walk around and they look at all the beautiful vintage pens and say, that's really nice, but I don't know anything about them. And we tried to help them understand that these pens are treasures, and they really are not into it. They're more into buying a cheap notebook to blog and writing everything down and doing that. And they're not looking for the vintage pens. And that's why the business itself, and I don't know if Mario will agree with me, has changed over the last, really since the pandemic. It has really changed. The new people who come in are a young couple. They're usually about 25 or 26, okay? And they walk in together and they want to know, but they really don't want to know about vintage. They really only want to know about the more modern kinds of pens that are out there. And you read about it. I read about it online all the time. My Twisby broke. What do I do? You don't hear somebody say, my Mont Blanc broke. What do I do? Although I did have that happen today, so we're working on that. But really and truly, the younger people do not really have that vintage passion. I'm using that term because I think that's the term that we really, somebody who whips out a beautiful Waterman pen from 1910, and they look at it, they say, that's nice. Where do I get the $10 pen? And that's the change in this particular hobby. The older guys that were around, and some of the guys that were around for years. I mean, I present the name Larry Liebman, and he is one of the foremost experts in this world on some of the vintage pens. Has Oh, just an amazing collection of vintage pens. But who's going to buy it? That's my question. You know, and that's the new face of this hobby. It really is. And people come to a show, they pay their $10, but we lost so many people in the last 10 years who were the biggest purveyors of pens in the country. Okay, really and truly, Cliff Harrington. These are names that just were amazing. Gary Lira, who had an amazing website every other month that he put out some of the most beautiful pens in the world and traveled the world to do pens. Okay, and there are 5 or 6 more that we've lost and they're not going to be replaced. And what's happening is that their collections, truthfully, are being sold backdoor from everybody, but a lot of people are not going to invest that kind of money in those collections of vintage. It's just not. I say that with sadness. I really do, because these guys really used to come to shows. I remember going to shows in Washington D.C. where on Friday night guys would come in with $1 million worth of pens and put it on a table, and people would fight to get to the pens so they could buy pieces of that collection. And I was in L.A. show, and Mario and I sat at the bar and we had a drink. We certainly didn't buy pens that night, right? It just wasn't something that really went on. And these people had a passion. You talk about passion. Oh my God, these people are just, were amazing when it came to, their collections. And who knows?
I think it has a lot to do with how society has changed in terms of what people do with products when they have them. You know what I mean? Like, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that people are very passionate about fountain pens now in a different way, as you were saying, but they're passionate about what it can do for them and how it can help them communicate in an analog way in a modern world. So there's a lot about vintage pens that are not appealing to, I think, the younger generation because they may not be as practical. For example, let me just take the Conklin crescent filler from 1910, 1920. The crescent filler was an innovation that was more than impressive for 1898 into the 1920s. I also think, though, that that system, even though innovative at the time, is extremely outdated now, right? So when it comes to people trying to, fill pens quickly or carry them with them or do things in a more practical way, I think it's just hard. It's a hard sell to tell them, okay, well, this is from 100 years ago. It's really awesome 100 years ago. It won't help you achieve your goal in your journaling that you're trying to achieve now, but it's really awesome. They're going to be like, oh, that's great. But what about this pen here? How much is this one? Oh, this one here is $60. It's a TWSBI. It fills. It has a lot of ink capacity. I don't have to change the sack, and it doesn't dry out. I think that's where their mindset is at. And I think it's the face of, it's like, I was thinking about it the other day. The analogy I use is every generation from, 200, 300 years ago till now loves music, but the medium of how they consume music has changed. I remember when cassette tapes were the way I listened to music, but now the way I listen to music is something I can't even hold it. It's a digital download or it's a stream, right? So the passion for music is there. It's just the way we consume it is different. Hey, did we just lose Mario?
I don't know where he went. His phone, knowing him, his phone ran out of juice. Or maybe a bathroom.
No, he would have said something. I think so. So everybody watching, if you suddenly just realize Mario, or anybody listening, if Mario is suddenly gone, it has something to do with the fact that he was using his Riverside FM app, and I think that's what it is. So I just texted him, told him to come back, that we don't hold anything against him. But I mean, I think that it's definitely there is definitely a place for vintage pens, but I think it's definitely smaller. There's a lot of people who love vintage pens out there, but I think that it's definitely true that there's a lot more people that love modern pens, and I think we're fortunate that those people who appreciate the modern pens even exist, and that because they exist, you're able to do what you do in terms of the pen show, which I want to talk about the pen show a little bit more.
Sure.
Knowing that there is change in the way people consume fountain pens and the way things are now, and you want to bring the New York Metropolitan Pen Show, formerly known as the Long Island Pen Show, to the forefront of fountain pen shows. What are you going to do? What are your plans to do this?
Well, the first thing that I think was important is we actually had 5 or 6 people fly in from Europe. Okay, the European buyers came in for the show last year, this year, and came in and actually bought a lot of, bought and sold a lot of vintage. Now we know the people that we'd like to get to come to the show, okay, and we know that there are people around the metropolitan area who are very large collectors. I mean, I know one of the people who sponsors our show is a gentleman named Eric Blumenkrantz, who has probably the best collection of Mont Blanc pens I have ever seen in my lifetime. I mean, he really is a collector and a procurer of some of the most amazing pens, and I'd like it would be wonderful if we get a chance to go and see what he does have in his office, because it's absolutely amazing. But he also lives in the metropolitan area, and he also sponsors our show. So we are looking to upgrade that end of the show. Okay.
So what this guy deals with a lot of Mont Blanc collections and their vintage pens?
Oh, absolutely. He has.
Okay. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm just trying to put this
okay.
together, and I don't want to sound rude. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to understand. So we're talking about a modernizing hobby, a hobby that's modernizing, and it's clear that the direction that the hobby is going is into more modern pens as opposed to vintage pens, that the vintage pen market, although existent, is diminishing as time goes on more and more.
Definitely a smaller percentage than it was.
Right. So your solution to bringing a small show like the New York Metropolitan Show is by implementing more vintage pens?
No. The answer is that a lot of people are very into smaller makers, individual makers who make unique pieces of artwork. Okay, and there were, I would say, 10 or 12 at our show the last time. Hopefully, we'll have more this time. Okay, but being in California and at the LA show a couple of weeks ago, I would say a good 25% of the vendors there were small makers of beautiful pens. Some of the stuff was some of the celluloids are beautiful. Some of the people make their own celluloids. Some of the people get, make their own, or some of them buy some very rare pieces. And many of these people are making using vintage materials with a modern flair to it. Okay. There's a guy named Tim Cullen. I don't know if you ever saw his name, but he makes some of the most beautiful modern pens with beautiful nibs and hand engraved nibs and hand engraved. Mario's, I think, on the way back.
There you are, Mario.
Engraved.
My apologies, guys. My phone just kicked me out.
That's all right. I'm sorry, Michael. Go ahead. So continue.
These guys are making magnificent stuff. I mean, really and truly, it's and I have some, and when we get a chance to, I'll show you. But this stuff is, first of all, modern, okay, and artwork, pieces of major artwork that, everybody, not cheap, really not cheap, in the $700 to $1,000 range. But there are many of these vendors that are out there that are making magnificent stuff, and it's starting to appeal to certain people, but they have to upgrade what they're what they're doing. Tim makes his own nibs and does amazing engravings on the clips and on the nibs, and they're
So what I'm kind of hearing you saying is, and Mario, you kind of bounced out because of your phone connection. Must be an Android. So I asked Michael, being that you guys have an intention to bring a smaller show like the New York Metropolitan Pen Show to the forefront of pen shows in the same way that the Philly show is and the DC pen show is, what are your plans? And he was just explaining to us, he's going to involve more of these independent makers who make art and who make pens that are vintage in material but modern in manufacture. And I love all these ideas. There are artistic pieces. He's talking about several different makers, and the pens are not cheap. They're close to $1,000, between $700 and $1,000. And that's one of the things that you guys are planning on doing. I just want to I'm thinking about the conversation. I think it's important to acknowledge that, yes, the newer generation of fountain pen users are in the 20s in age. They're 20s. So if your plan is to bring a pen show to a more forefront in terms of shows, wouldn't it make sense to make it just more accessible? And yes, invite all the people who sell their individually made pieces of art that are $700 to $1,000, but how are you going to reach the large group of people who are not the kind of people that can be accessibly able to buy a $700, $1,000 pen? I mean, I would think that if you're trying to make the show bigger, you would have to reach out to more people who can purchase pens, and maybe be it in the range of like $100 or $50 to $100. Wouldn't you say that?
Sure, I
I think,
but there are people, and we had people at the Long Island show who specialize in those kinds of pens. $50 to $200. Okay, and we encourage them to come, and they, again, there's a big difference between the people who spend $50 and the people who spend $200. Okay, we're a couple of years off from those people being able to afford $200 pens, and I say it with respect because you get a chance to talk to the people and educate them at the shows, and Mario and I do that. Okay, we try to get people to understand, and occasionally you'll get somebody who will step up and people say to me all the time, I never spent $350 on a pen before. Why am I buying a Mont Blanc 146? And you put the pen in their hand and let them write with it, and there's something that comes out in their face about using something that really is a level above the regular level, and it's part of it is education, and it's going to take some time.
Can we talk about the levels, what you're referring to? Like, for example, what is it that you're saying a Mont Blanc 146, you put that in their hand, they write with it, and they're seeing it above the level of whatever they were using. What is it that you're talking about when you say it's above?
They're talking about above the $300 level. Okay, you can get a Mont Blanc for $150, and it writes very nicely. And sometimes you tell a person, look, here's a nice Mont Blanc, write with it, you use it for a year and see if you like it. And they will come back to you at the next show and say, wow, that was a great pen. I'd like to now go a little further to the next level of Mont Blanc. Okay, and the Mont Blanc made some school pens that, we sell for $100, $125, $150. And then the next level is going up to a 146 or something in a 142. That,
right.
Be in that $300 range. Okay, and then eventually, and at the same time, I'm going to show them a 139. And they'll tell me, how much is that pen? And I'll say $4,000. And they'll say, oh my God, that's a Grail. And when they come back, they ask me, where's the Grail pen? And I show them, a 139, and they say, well, when I make my fortune, I'm going to buy that pen. And then you create someone who has a passion along those lines. It's I think it's educational. We have to educate them to I've been to the New York, the kids in New York who have they have a meeting, I think, a Thursday every month in the city, and it's a pleasure to go see these people. They really enjoy what they're doing. They enjoy writing. They're really involved in it, but they're a couple of years away from spending the big bucks from their pen, and I understand that. I really do. Okay, but some of them have come around, and we hope they'll show up at the show this time, because they are.
I just feel like if you're waiting for them to come around, if you're waiting for people to come around by your standards for the show, in order to get the show to be bigger, I think you're going to be waiting a while.
Mario, Mario and I both, but we've both talked about it, and we've seen a kid who works for me. I sold him his first pen at 11, okay, and he's now working for me repairing Mont Blanc pens, okay, and he has a passion. He's a doctor. He's in the process of becoming a doctor. And he says to everybody, I learned about pens when 11 years of age. I bought my first pen from Mike. Okay, so yeah, it takes some time, and Mario will be around to be able to do that, and I'm going to be laughing at him when he keeps trying to do it, because I know he has that passion. But that's what you hope for. You're not going to become rich. Nobody that I know has become rich selling pens. I have to be honest with you. Okay, very few people.
I think Brian Goulet does pretty well.
Yeah, he does.
But Mario, I'm sorry, Michael, we're running a little short on time, but Mario, I want to ask you the same question. New York Metropolitan Pen Show. You want to bring it out of the little conference rooms that are Hofstra University into the forefront and to the spectrum of large pen shows. What is your plan to do that? Is it the same as what Michael has in mind, or do you have different ideas?
Maybe some parallel ideas, guys. I think I'll give you a quick but comprehensive answer. I think we're looking at three different things. For starters, to take us back to what we were talking about, just as I fell off earlier, in terms of the connectivity between the buying audience and the vintage pens, I'll ask you to, in your own mind, traverse to other collectible industries. And you see that the things that are that the clientele are passionate about, that it's the stuff that they lived with, that they grew up with. The kind of numbers that a Michael Jordan pair of sneakers will bring, I find mind-boggling. But clearly there are people who remember him as a passionate part of their youth, and they have both the willingness and the desire and the means to spend an inordinate amount of money on a pair of Michael Jordan sneakers. And that is an example. You were talking about the gaming industry earlier, the comic book industry. There's all kinds of examples across multiple, genres of collectibles that you find this one thread really follows through. Something that connects somebody to a memory they have that, stems back to their earlier years. We don't have anybody we don't have the conglomerate of people who are coming to shows right now who remember growing up with a pen that was made in 1946. So that's why I believe we're seeing those kind of fall off a little bit. I mean, not entirely, clearly not. And there will always be people who are passionate about Americana early on. And I will tell you, one of the things I love is that the Parker 51 is one of the most successful products that has ever been built in the United States. And I think that will stand for a very, very, very long time to come. The appeal of that, at least to me, does not fall off, because it has a place in Americana that is outside and probably supersedes people who are passionate about collecting pens. We're talking about an item in an industry that completely changed the industry. Every other manufacturer had to produce something that competed with this product. It was that earth-shattering. And of course, we've seen that with Apple as a more modern example. So that's one response I want to give to the change of the constituency at the shows. I fully agree with what you're intimating, Roy. We cannot focus exclusively on bringing manufacturers in, and especially these, handcrafted pens that are only going to be, $700 plus. I think the success comes in offering a range. That helps to give people a variety of things that they have exposure to, both to purchase and to learn. And when you're looking at, let me give you a good example of someone who I am incredibly enamored with. I respect a great deal.
Oh, I was going to mention him too.
His
yeah,
pens,
amazing.
Yeah, This is a perfect example. His pens are, let's say, from most of them, not exclusively. We're looking at that. You know what? Hold that up and let me tell you what's in your hand. The man is capable of working with multiple materials. So you've got a shell or a horn, and
that's right,
a piece of wood.
For everybody not watching, I'm holding
wood.
up a Ryan Krusak, the Legend pen, the large size. It's made of moose antler and wood. Excellent pen. I bought it at a pen show when I met Ryan Krusak in DC 21.
Yeah, I think it's 2020.
Now, that is a perfect example of something that I think, even though it's not inexpensive, that is an extraordinary value. He draws the artwork, then has to transcribe his drawing so that it can be shrunk down to fit on a pen. Then he has to put it onto a computer program so that it can be inscribed on the pen. He's got to cut the antler to the shape of the barrel, shape the cap, and if I couldn't really tell because of the size of my screen, but I'm just gathering that you have one of the caps that is etched. So that's a completely different process. So here's a man who has masterfully, learned a half a dozen different disciplines, including that artwork. He drew that to bring you a pen of that magnitude. Now, I think that's pertinent because in my mind, that presents everything you could hope for to get someone who's interested in a $150 or $200 pen to consider the plausibility, the sensibility of spending.
It's funny that you mentioned that because when I went to the show, Tom, was it 21 when I bought this? We were together, remember? It was 21. So I was in DC 21, and I went there with my wife, and Tom. We all met. We got together. Tom and Kieran and Sal was there. Sal was there, right? Tom's pop, Mr. Otto, was there as well. And my intention was not to buy a single pen at the DC Pen Show, and I had my wife supervising me to ensure that I didn't buy a pen. Ended up buying this pen because it was so unique, and the scrimshaw was amazing. And first of all, Ryan Krusak, what a handsome dude, well dressed, had his family with him. It was just such a lovely sight, and it was like, you know what? I wasn't going to buy a pen. My wife is like, this is something that you would buy. Not the Pilot Custom 91 that you can get from any other retailer. You can only get this pen from Ryan Krusak. There's only one person that can make it, and that's great. And I think that this pen, just so you know, cost $425, and I think it was well worth it. It was a great price. It was worth every penny to me. You showed me a Mont Blanc 146 for $705, at least now before the price increase. That's injection molded resin on a pen that has a snowflake on it because its name was built up over years. This man built this pen. Nothing comes close to the artwork and capacity of thoughtfulness and artistry that went into this pen. Nothing comes close. And me being the generation that you're talking about, although I'm not in my 20s, although I may look it, me being that generation that's not into vintage, this pen appeals to me because it appeals to me. It's not because anything connects me to my past or it was anything that I grew up with. But having said that, there are a lot of things I love that are, like, for example, Nintendo. I don't care what they put out. I always buy Nintendo, and I always buy the Mario games that I never finish playing. because when I was a kid, I remember playing the little Mario beep, 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 right? Now, there are people who are...
You know what my
What's
father's
that?
name is, Ryan? You know what my father's name
I'm going
was?
to go with Mario? No, Luigi.
No, that's mine.
Luigi,
His name was
okay.
Luigi.
That is awesome.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well,
I
my
had
thing
to.
is, like, my question is, guys like Ryan Krusak would be the answer, I guess, right? Because with the new fountain pen generation, the new hobbyists, it's hard to give them a product that connects with their past, being their past didn't include fountain pens, right? Like Nintendo got me because they can connect to my past with Mario. What is the fountain pen Mario for these new people? Or is there one?
Pokemon.
Right, but there's no fountain pen you can't catch a Pokemon with a fountain pen. You know what I mean? So, and there's nothing that connects the fountain pen, the new generation of fountain pen users with their past because they, like I said, fountain pens didn't exist in their past. So, what can you do to bring them in even more if you can't connect with their past the way Mario connects with my past?
And I think the answer is to show a variety of things that are appealing that are made from a variety of materials, that are made in a variety of places around the globe, that just represent the great variety of writing instruments that are made. I mean, buying a Krusak and buying a Jonathan Brooks or buying a Platinum.
Okay, so it looks like he's having some connectivity issues, but he was going on to say that buying a Platinum, buying a Ryan Krusak, buying some of these pens are super crazy unique. Although I see where he's going. He's offering them a range of pens that give them accessibility to different materials, different kinds of artistic experiences. I think the one thing that we have to always consider, though, is the accessibility. So you can offer them a whole wide variety of different artistic styles and creations, but if they can't afford it, as Michael said, they're just a few years off from being able to spend that kind of money. Mm-hmm. What do you do about those people? Because they're the majority.
They definitely are, and we discussed this, in L.A., and I agree with you 100%. What we have to do is shrink that time between now, when they can't get there, and having a passion for something that they really want to acquire over the next couple of years. And that comes with an educational factor, okay? That comes with wanting something that you want those Michael Jordan sneakers. So you may not be able to afford them now, but maybe you put a couple of dollars away, and a year from now or 2 years from now, you go and you buy them. Okay, and that's what we're hoping, and you're right. It may not come very quickly, but I do see people come back to me. One of the things I do is when especially at some of the shows, I give pens, inexpensive pens to children, and parents will bring their kids back the next year and say they use that pen, and they want to get something a little better than that. And I do have some children that have come back to me 3 and 4 years, okay, and say their parents say they can't wait to come to the show because they want to find something a little better for them to use. So it's educational. I don't know if that's the answer. I really don't, to be honest with you. But I do see people that come back to me frequently, okay, year after year, and they're passionate about it, and sometimes you just have to build that passion in people. Hopefully we do.
That's fair enough. Well, listen, it's we're way past our time. We gotta wrap this up. I feel bad that Mario is not able to be here to wrap it up with us. I do understand that he was a little bit blindsided with the scheduling,
some technical difficulties,
and he's currently
over on his way to bring his mom dinner tonight. Okay, to be truthful. So,
right. No, he told me that. He told me he was going, but he didn't know that there was a podcast happening tonight. So honestly, to be honest, I didn't know that he was going to be doing the podcast with us tonight until he called me to tell me he didn't know that.
Without him being, 50% of my
right.
So.
That's good. Maybe next time let him know. Right? Or let him know. But listen, I want to thank you guys both, Michael and Mario, who's not here, unfortunately, because he's having technical difficulties. Thank you very much for enlightening us. Before we sign off, we have to talk a little bit about the New York Metropolitan Pen Show that is coming up very soon. I think in a couple of months, actually. When is the New York...
April 22nd and 23rd at Hofstra University Student Center, okay?
Okay.
And admission is $12, okay, to get in. Free parking, okay? And you can spend, if you want to come for 2 days, the Friday and Saturday, it's $20, okay, for both days. And there'll be some very interesting discussions and some interesting people giving the discussions. Again, you know, we did a discussion at the last show with somebody who is the foremost expert on Chilton pens in the world, okay? And do you know how many people showed up for the performance? None, okay, because there aren't too many people who know about Chilton fountain pens. And this guy has a world-class collection of them, okay? But, you know, the younger people didn't know anything about Chilton, which was a wonderful thing. And what I would do, what I tell people is the internet is a wonderful source of all these things. And if you spend some time doing a little bit of research and you look at how these companies came into play, and many of them were from New York. You know, they were from downtown Manhattan, and you know, the Eclipse Pen Company is an absolute treasure to study about that company. Okay, and being in New York and then moving to Chicago. Okay, and if you want to learn something and enjoy it, you know, or look at what Waterman did in downtown Manhattan and the building which they did, you know, they put down on the Lower East Side. It's absolutely fascinating to look into this stuff and to research it. So, and if anybody wants some stuff, just call up and ask, and we'll be glad to give them some information about those things.
Okay, so the New York Metropolitan Pen Show is going to be happening on, as you said, April 22nd and 23rd. That is a Saturday. I'm assuming it's from 10 o'clock to 6 p.m.
9 o'clock on Saturday, 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and then Sunday 10 to 4.
Okay, 9 to 5 on Saturday, 10 to 4 on Sunday. Admission is $12 each day if you come separately on each day. Mm-hmm. Or if you pay up front for both days, it's $20 admission. So make sure you guys check that out. There will be links, if you guys can provide us links. There will be links in the description below of the show notes today.
NYPenshow.com, okay?
NYPenshow.com?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll throw that in the link below.
And I hope all of your listeners will come and visit us, okay? And, you know, we're open to questions and whatever we'd like. We'd like to see you guys there, okay, hopefully. And, you know, we'll spread the passion. That's what I want.
And also, everybody listening and everybody watching, I would love to hear your feedback on what you think you would like to see, or what you would like to see different from the Long Island Pen Show. I'm sorry, the New York Metropolitan Pen Show. Write us at pentertainmentpodcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment in the YouTube video below, and then I will make sure I pass it on to our friends Michael and Mario, so that way they can have some feedback that could possibly help them. You could also reach out to us at PenBoyRoy or at Ink Journal on Instagram. You know, give us some ideas. What is it that you want to see from the Long Island, New York Metropolitan Pen Show? What is it that you've seen in the past? Have you been there? Do you plan on going? And if not, why? Write in. Let us know what you think. Love to hear your thoughts. And again, Michael, thank you for joining us. And Mario, I'm sorry you're not here. Thanks for joining us. Love you guys. Be well. Be safe.
Stay inky.